Your business's success depends on relationships, relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Gina Clementi. Gina helps brands find their soul. As the founder of Good Story and a seasoned fractional CMO, she transforms how companies connect with their audiences by injecting authenticity into every touchpoint. With a career spanning Nike and Adidas, Gina has mastered the art of turning complex brand challenges into resonant human stories that inspire connection and loyalty. At Nike, she earned a Nike Maxim for "The Consumer Decides" and revolutionized Nike Run Club's global presence. At Providence, she tackled America's physician shortage through innovative brand initiatives, achieving record growth in brand impressions and engagement. Her expertise spans viral media campaigns, enhancing brand affinity, and catalyzing growth, often likened to leading an army of caffeinated squirrels with a deep understanding of brand values. Gina's philosophy: in a world of algorithms, human connection is the ultimate differentiator. When she's not crafting narrative magic, she's hiking with her Chief Barkington officers, Ellie and Olive. Congrats on leading an army of caffeinated squirrels, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I love that bit about in a world of algorithms, human connection is the ultimate differentiator. Please go on about that. Tell me more about that.
I think with the rise of AI and what you're seeing in a lot of feeds, I think that a lot of companies are really working through generating a lot of their marketing using these tools, which are great and they're additive. But what's really missing within this is that true human connection. So you can use the tools to really make like really flashy campaigns and great content, but the things that really set brands apart is that human connection that you can make. It really bonds you with your consumer and makes you unforgettable.
Yeah, I think it takes that from a transactional relationship to a real personal one where there's emotion, and the people that you're connecting with are more likely to stay loyal to your brand. I mentioned about the building brand loyalty. I think a lot of companies suffer from a lack of brand loyalty because they're not connecting with people on that level anymore.
I think a lot of brands focus on the next click, which is great. Like we all want to make more money, but what's missing is when we kind of cut out some of that human piece of it, you start to lose the audience. And they're getting a lot of content fed to them on a regular basis. So what are those ways that you can differentiate your products and really connect with them in a meaningful way where they're going to keep coming back?
Yeah, I think there's so much content, more content than ever, and it's so overwhelming. And especially with, the rise of the term I've heard and I love is AI slop, where it's just a lot of kind of generic, middle of the road at best quality content that, yeah, it's easy to put out, but it doesn't stick in people's minds. It doesn't evoke any emotions. It doesn't build trust or affinity. And so what's the point of it?
It's just like a content mill at this point. And yeah. I think users see through it. You see it in everything that we're doing. I don't think that we should throw AI out. I love AI. We all love it. But I think when we're creative, we need to look at it from a different lens. It's not going to replace creative individuals, but I use the analogy of the escalator didn't replace the stairs and the elevator didn't replace the escalator, but they're things that are helping us out. So look at it through that lens, not something that's going to solve the problem for you. You can't create an entire marketing plan just based off of AI because you're losing that human touch.
Yeah, so I love the name of your company, Good Story. So tell me a time when you've helped one of your clients with building that human connection into their brand and marketing.
Sure. So I've spent a bulk of my career with Nike, and I had an amazing run there where, you don't get better marketing skills than working at like a brand like Nike. And when I left Nike and started doing some work with Good Story, one of the projects that I took on was a startup with Providence Healthcare. Um, I took it on for a number of different reasons. The first is that I get to build an entire organization and a platform in a place that was really impactful and challenging. We have a physician shortage happening. It's even more compounded now after the pandemic. I was actually speaking to
Mhm.
my dad about this yesterday, and the hospital in his local community is, going bankrupt. And you're seeing that a lot more. And there's a challenge of getting physicians into roles. And this incubator that's owned by Providence was looking at that shortage and how do they start to fill a need in markets that are needed. And so they were selling their services to like-minded organizations and also recruiting to Providence Healthcare System, which is about 52 hospitals wide. The interesting thing is when I stepped in there, I did it for two reasons. One, I get to build, and two, I get to lead a team from a different direction. So I came from Nike, which was a completely different rat race over there, to an organization that is all the people are coming out of a nonprofit. The leadership team was all women. I'm leading from a completely different direction. So, and I use the parallel because I think when you talk about empathetic marketing and connecting with humans, you also have to think about it from the empathetic leadership standpoint too. And I think there's a lot of parallels between the two. And so when I joined the organization, it was really understanding a lot of the why and what they were doing, and then going out and actually speaking to physicians. So when I jumped into the role, I think they had, because they came over from a nonprofit, that if we slap nonprofit on everything, everyone's going to love it. And they didn't really dive into like, what is that thing that's making physicians tick? What are the things that are keeping them up at night? What are the things that when you're recruiting them that are tangible and intangible for them? And how do we connect with them in a different direction? The same thing came with the team too, of like, how do I connect with them and come at them from a different angle? And so it challenged me in a lot of different respects. Um, when we did a lot of the research and insight work with them, I think the thing that was eye-opening to them is that physicians don't necessarily always want to see nonprofit on things. And what they're perceiving it as is it's resonating completely different than the organization we're born out of. And we use videos to show them where they think it's more, they're not going to get paid. They're under all this pressure, and they feel like it's more administrative. So like, what are the things that were important to them? And I used the when I was building the platform and kind of, working through with the leadership team, I used the analog of method soap um, as an example of, you can still be nonprofit, you can still be driven with your mission, but you can just repackage it in a different way that's a little bit more in a position where your consumers can receive it in a way that matters to them. And Method did the same thing when they first launched. They went into market, they're an eco-friendly product, they were on the shelves. No one was buying it because everyone has this notion that if it's eco-friendly, it's not going to clean. I think they might even tried sampling their product by drinking it.
Yeah, I
To
remember
prove it was,
those. Yeah.
yeah, to prove it was safe. And then what they did is go back and say, okay, well, we're not going to lose our mission. We're going to repackage it in a way that's appealing to our consumers. So they're still achieving their mission. It's just packaged in a way that meets their consumer where they're at.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that companies forget, especially when they're so focused, like I said, on getting that next click, or so focused on the dashboards and the KPIs, is that
Mhm.
you're not meeting your audience where they are. You're never going to engage with them. You're never going to inspire them to take that next step because you're, it's so obvious that you don't understand them.
Mhm.
And you don't have to lose who you are. You just have to understand how you're perceived by your audience,
Mhm.
and you actually have to stop and listen to them. And that makes so much sense for you to come in as a outside consultant and go, hey, let's actually talk to your audience and see how they actually feel about this, and invest in that research and relationship building first, instead of what so many companies do these days with their marketing is just throw stuff out and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And even stuff that does stick doesn't stick great and is less and less sticky each time you throw it out. Whereas if you just get to know people first and have the patience to listen and hear people,
Mhm.
then what you put out isn't trying to stick. It's going to be received well, and they're going to catch it. It's not going to have to stick to them. They're going to catch it and enjoy it, and you completely come across differently than all the other like pitch slaps and like templated automated
Mhm.
things that people are bombarded with on a daily basis.
You make a completely different connection with someone when you show that you're human. I think actually this morning I was scrolling through LinkedIn and I saw, I don't know if you saw the ad with Coors Light came out, and there was a misspelling in their ad. I think they misspelled refreshment. And then they had a response of like, oops, it was a Monday. It's a human response. We're all
Yes,
going to make those. And so when you're vulnerable like that, I think that you make a different connection with someone. I mean,
absolutely.
and the same thing with leading a team. Like you'll get more out of them if you have that vulnerable connection with them, and it creates trust. And you need that with your brand and your team.
Yeah, showing that you under like being vulnerable and that you're human and that you share the sort of experiences and struggles that your audience or your team members like
Mhm.
struggle with. Show that you're uh you you have that in common goes way deeper than any kind of demographics like surface level similarities or differences. It transcends all the little petty things that people have used to categorize and differentiate people into groups, and it supersedes those by connecting on a more human level and
Yeah.
showing you what you have in common with people instead of what you don't, and that just goes, people are craving that sort of connection
Mhm.
these days.
I think a lot about, I worked with a CPG brand around changing the narrative for them in sustainability.
Mhm.
And we talked a lot about climate change and greenwashing, and consumers can see through the bullshit. I hope I can swear. I
Oh
apologize.
yeah.
Okay. But consumers can see through the bullshit. And I always, whenever I think about that human connection, I think about sustainability and climate change. And when you're greenwashing your brand, they know it. And so when you're full of it, they're going to understand. I think when I was at Nike, I mean, that was something that I took away, is really deeply understanding what the consumer does and understanding what they need from us. And so then when we served up innovation like products, any storytelling and inspiration, and any tools that we would help enable them, it was all built around helping to serve athletes and staying true to what we did. I mean, that was a lot of the run club work that we did. It's, we had the products and we had the footwear, but like, how do we get and create a community for them to engage in and participate in, and then give them an enablement where they can go do it? We had, when we launched the run club, of course, we didn't like make anyone wear Nikes when they went to run, but there was one person that was not very happy that we changed the formatting of the run club. And I remember he sent a letter to the CEO about it, and it was so upset. But then as they started building the community and started, going a lot of more runs, and what we were doing, the relationship with that consumer changed, and they later sent a note to the CEO about how they bought their first pair of Nike. And so it was a different connection that we made with that one person, where they understood what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and I think it's great because goes it takes a product which is so almost commoditized, which is
Mhm.
shoes. There's so many options. How do you tell the difference between most consumers when they look at two different pairs, even of like Nikes? It's like, how do they tell which one's which?
Mhm.
But making it about the community of runners and the experience of running and exercise and personal fitness and building those relationships makes people, even someone who was originally a detractor, now go, okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to now buy your product, and not just buy the product, but it's probably going to also evangelize the club
Mhm.
and get more people involved. Are going to buy more because they're speaking from the emotional connection and the warm relationship they have with the brand, not from what the shoes are as a product.
Correct. Yeah, they're not saying, "Oh, we're great. I have Nike Air in this. This is awesome." But it's it's an experience for them. And it's something that they've really built a lifestyle around and a community around, which was the whole point for how we kind of rebuilt what we were doing with the run clubs.
Yeah, that's all. So if it's someone who's listening is going, oh my gosh, this makes total sense.
Yep.
We're totally missing this. What's something they can start to do like today after they finish listening to this episode? What's like the actionable step they can take to get on the path of building these sorts of relationships?
I think it's really truly diving in to get the perspective and understand your consumer and audience and who you're talking to. And investing that time in the research. I talk a lot about product launches, and one of the biggest mistakes I see brands making is, and I've literally heard this going into meetings of, oh, we're going to launch, but we don't really need to do research. I shared it with my kid and they loved it. So, and I'm like, well, that's not the pool you want to go to. It's not very unbiased. But shifting the perspective, getting out with your consumer and really understanding where they're at, and what they need from you as a brand. I think you start there, and that's the foundation of kind of what you build. It doesn't mean that your brand is not going to be authentic to who you are and you're going to lose that authenticity. It's more about how do you package it in a way that meets your consumer where they're at, and build
I
that
think, yeah,
connection.
that's a great tip. And something I want to add is that a lot of people, when they think about doing research, they think, oh, we'll send out a survey to a bunch of
Yeah.
people and ask some very generic questions, and whatever people answer is going to be helpful. But people forget, and I mentioned this in an earlier episode, actually episode 3, is that people make buying decisions with a different part of their brain than they make and they answer surveys with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just send out a generic survey and don't dive deeper into the real reasons why people are buying or what the real emotions are behind their actions, which requires more one-on-one interviews and discussions and really connecting with them instead of sending out a superficial survey, you're not going to get the sort of answers that you really need to make informed decisions on your product or on like a change you're trying to make it for your employees or anything that involves an audience you care about. You need to really sit down and talk to some actual representatives of that group and get to know them on a deeper level, because the people will say they did something for X, Y, and Z reasons, but that's the things they came up to like justify it to themselves and other people. But the real reason is something much more emotional and personal and deep that often they're not going to divulge in a simple survey.
One of the things we did when I was on and I did this also with tennis, when I worked at Nike, but with running, is we dove into like the communities. Like we went out to the run clubs, we ran with them. They would share with us like stuff in their closet, and we would talk about the product, and you become a member of that community and kind of get the perspective that where they're coming from and see how they express themselves and how they're using the product and what matters to them. We did the same thing with the tennis rebrand when we worked on it. Is we dove deep with the consumers and built out video diaries of what's in their what is their thought process when they're getting ready for a match? How do they choose their products? What's in their closet? Like just even beyond just that product of understanding their lifestyle. The same with physicians. I think I felt very blessed because I know getting time with a physician is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And it's very stressful. But once we got to sit down with them and do some video diaries with them, it was very eye-opening to the team to hear what some of them were saying and to really build out those personas.
Yeah, and I think it just comes back to this process works for Nike, for different products at Nike, and also for the physicians, because your audience for each of those situations they're all humans, and they're all making the decisions with emotions, and they want to be seen, heard, and understood. And it's not anything new or revolutionary. It's actually just something that's been forgotten, and people think they can cut that corner and still get the results. Oh, yeah. And that's just not it's not the reality of the situation.
Mm-hmm. They think if they just plug it into like Chat GPT, it's going to fix it and that's going to be it. Or if they talk to their kid, they'll get enough. But I think and I realize also not all brands can scale to the size of like a Nike, but there are things that you can do and start to take it in-house that's beyond just that survey to really understand. And some of the investment too is, you're always going to want to invest in that performance marketing and have that next click. But there's also going to be pieces when we think about storytelling and advertising that are more based in that emotional space and connecting that the next thing coming out of that may not be a click to the website, but it's building a relationship with a consumer. And a lot of brands, it takes a little bit to get there, but that's what Nike's been great at doing, is kind of building that connection.
Yeah, and it's having the patience to build those long-term relationships, knowing that, yeah, it's not gonna make your like monthly or quarterly numbers look better specifically, but that like the long-term dividends and the long-term relationships are going to lead to a lot more sustainable long-term growth and stability, and ability to withstand disruptions and things that might normally like knock your competitors off their pedestals, because you have people that actually care about your brand as on a human to human level, and not just see you as another transaction, another like expense in their expense report.
I always tell people, and I love the analogy you said dividends, but I use the analogy of your brand as a bank account, and the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it, and you have to invest in it. Otherwise, you don't get the dividends out of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great final note for this. I thank you so much for connecting with me today, Gina. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Gina, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.
Thank you.